MBDA is located in Tacoma, Washington, and we are operated by the city of Tacoma, and this is where our partnership comes in. But we do cover the state of Washington, and I see kind of many of the names here that we've supported. So, it's again, we cover the state of Washington, and if you need support with technical assistance to obtain these access, to capital, please reach out to us or any of the partners here. Because as I always say, there's no wrong door for you to go through to get the information that you need so that you can make the informed decision and be able to obtain capital. Now, one most important thing I want you to know that is on the federal level, in the second round of congressional funding, we hope that they will make the PPP available and with more flexible, spending requirements. But the most important thing that I want you to know is that you must have your financials, meaning your balance sheet and your profit and loss statements. This is critical. And so we do have technical assistance providers such as a bookkeeper that we do have on contract to help you with that. Because at the end of the day, it is a first come, first served basis. And so this is the most important thing that I want you to know. Also, today you'll hear a lot about from the I think Graham Alston is here. He's a CPA and also legal. So if you have some questions about the forgiveness and what is going to be required, we also have bankers here that can support. So I know the program is very long, but we wanted to make the best maximum use of your time. And so again, we hope that this information session is very informative for you. And so with that, I'd like to hand it off to my partner. Carol Wolf. Carol, would you like to talk a little bit about what you're doing at the city? I know the city of Tacoma has been very innovative in trying to support small local businesses, especially in the subcontracting community. So with that, Carol Wolf, Division Manager for Equity and Contracting Team, or what we call the new SBE department. Carol, take it away.
Thank you so much. Thank you, Linda, for inviting me to be a part of this. And thank you, Jessica and Lily, for making it work for us, especially for us technologically challenged people who have issues getting into the system to begin with. The city of Tacoma is really grateful to partner with the MBDA office because as we try to share with them the tools and the services we have, the majority of this relationship has been we have learned from both Linda and her team and the work that they do that we have a long way to go for us to be able to service all of our entrepreneurial ecosystem here in Tacoma. And that means our micro enterprises, our small businesses, and particularly our minority owned businesses. We have found in recent days, and particularly with the COVID challenge, it's amplified that we have gaps in our system, and particularly it is the access to capital. That is something that my division, the business services and workforce partnerships, we are committed to learning and to doing better as we move forward in that area to share either the financial resources we have or as we partner with the private sector and other community-based organizations to get their funding out appropriately to businesses that need them and want them. We've been learning a lot through this. And so I know you're going to hear from Deirdre, who works in our division, who we embed with the Office of MBDA so that she can learn from them, but also give to the MBDA the skill sets that we have here in the city of Tacoma. Also, you're going to hear from her and she will share with you a bit more detail what we've learned in trying to get financial products out into the community in this time of COVID, but also let you know where we're headed and how we can be of service. And also Malika is also in our division and we also embed her with Linda and her team so we can also learn from them as well as we can share with the MBDA office the services and skills that we have. So I'm excited to be here. I'm going to stay on for the 3 hours because I want to hear from you. That's the way that we try to do better service is to learn directly from businesses in this challenge. And I ask you, please get questions to Linda or Deirdre and they will get to the city and we'll do our best to answer them if they're in the city of Tacoma area. Because we want you to succeed. And so we're here to be a part of seeing how we can be better partners in your success. So thank you all for taking the time to be here.
Thank you, Carol. Thank you, Linda. As you know that Linda and Carol are here to support you guys, I just want to give you just a little background. I've been working with Linda for almost 5 years. I have another hat as the project director for U.S. Department of Transportation Small Business Program. We've been working closely to provide every single information to all of you, especially with the COVID. This is a collective effort from us. So since we are learning about how we get the money, so we're gonna, or funds available for you guys, we're gonna learn that from Deirdre. So Deirdre is going to do the presentation, the first presentation. And like I said, feel free to write your questions in the chat box. I and Jessica and Malika is gonna monitor the chat box. So Deirdre, we are going to kind of like interrupt you a little bit if we have like some questions. Is that okay? Okay.
Yes.
Take it away, Deirdre.
All right, I'm just going to go ahead and share my screen really quickly. Just 1 second. All right, can everybody see my screen?
Yes.
Okay. So I'm going to talk a little bit about an upcoming program that the city of Tacoma is going to be launching in late January. It's called our Resurgence Loan, and we're looking to launch this program around the last week of January. So we're giving this presentation to give folks a little bit of lead time to get ready and get prepared, and also understand what this program is and how you could use it to help your business get through the pandemic. So the program is going to be called the Resurgence Loan. And so here's just a brief overview. So in order to help businesses overcome the effects of COVID-19 and thrive, the city of Tacoma will be offering low interest loans of up to $25,000 that will require no repayment for 1 year. So if your loan closes in March of 2021, you will not be required to make any payments until March of 2022. We really want to encourage small businesses, especially our micro businesses, to really look into this program. It's a really good financial product that's a little bit different than some of the other relief packages that have been out there, in the sense that it's a little less restrictive. So when it comes down to some of the other grants and loans and programs that have been out there, you had to have proved or justified a specific percentage of loss. You may have only been able to use the funds retroactively, so to cover losses that you experienced in the past 6 months, or it had to be tied to specific payroll requirements and that you keep certain employees on. This loan is a lot more flexible. It's a lot easier to use and has a lot less red tape. And so it's really something that we want our micro businesses to take a look at in Tacoma. And so, oh, that should say Resurgence Loan, my apologies. So the Resurgence Loan requirements, this is how you'll be able to qualify. You will need to be either a brick and mortar or home-based business located and licensed within Tacoma city limits. We did another program that was similar to this back in April, March, and we only did brick and mortar businesses, which means that you have like a physical office or storefront, or, you know, a business that people can walk in and out of, or that you have a lease. What we found was that we unintentionally left out a really large portion of businesses in Tacoma. We got a lot of inquiries from home-based businesses. So in this next launch, we wanted to kind of address that gap, because it was an unexpected gap that we didn't anticipate that we would see. And so we wanted to make sure that we were as inclusive as possible with this new loan program, because we understand that everyone is experiencing severe losses right now. And again, this is for businesses in Tacoma city limits specifically. So there's certain neighboring areas that are in unincorporated Pierce County, like Fircrest, Spanaway, Parkland, and Midland. So you'll want to definitely make sure and check that your business is actually in Tacoma city limits. And if you have any questions about that, you can definitely contact myself or any of my colleagues, and we can help you figure that out. Businesses need to also have been in operation for at least 6 months as of January 2021. So that would be if the business opened in June of 2020, essentially, they are eligible to apply. This is another change that we made. Previously, businesses had to be in operation for 1 full year, which has also been the trend among most of the products that are out there. But we also realized that there are businesses who opened in 2020 and had been working on that before, we found ourselves in this pandemic. And so we wanted to make sure that we could also help some newer businesses, because we realized that they need help too. And so we're doing 6 months, because that'll allow us to see some, financial documents, because this is a loan. So we do have to be able to underwrite an application. So we are allowing businesses that have 6 months of financials at least. Lastly, businesses must have 20 or fewer full-time equivalent employees. And what that means is a full-time equivalent means 40 hours a week. So if you have, say, 4 employees that work 10 hours a week, they're part-time, that equals up to 40 a week. That's actually just 1 full-time equivalent. And most businesses in Tacoma, I think it's over 90%, have less than 20 or fewer full-time employees. So we're making sure that we cast as wide a net as possible to allow as much people to be able to apply, because we found, like, especially for restaurants who are really suffering as a result of the shutdown, in our last program, I think we did 10 full-time equivalent employees. That was really hard for some of our restaurants to be able to qualify. So we definitely have made some adjustments going forward with the resurgence loan, in identifying some of those gaps that we encountered. So we're trying to make sure that we can get as many people to apply as possible. And so you're probably wondering, how do you use this loan? As I said previously, it's a very flexible loan. So you can use the resurgence loan for working capital, to purchase equipment, to buy inventory, for payroll. You may also use it for rent or mortgage. However, if you are a home-based business, we are not allowed, per federal guidelines, to utilize these funds for rent or mortgage or utilities, just because it's very complicated to separate that residential versus commercial use. It's just too difficult. So home-based businesses, those are the only 2 things that you cannot use it for. However, again, this is really flexible. So we had previous products like a grant that we're actually working on right now. And there were some people who wanted to use it to, say, get a website created, use it for some marketing, and things like that. And based on the requirements for that grant and some of the other loans and grants that are out there, those are not necessarily eligible uses because they don't address a loss. With this loan, you can do those kinds of things, and you can use it as working capital, which means that you could get this loan, put it into your business account, and use it going forward. And so I just really want everyone who's on this call to understand how flexible this is, and that if you're in a position to take on a loan, that this might be a really good opportunity for your business. So our application requirements. So these are the things that you're going to want to make sure that you are getting prepared now if you don't already. Like Linda mentioned, taxes and profit and loss and balance sheet are going to be really important, because for our application, we need to be able to do a financial analysis to determine if your business is loan ready. Because another thing that we don't want to do is give loans to businesses that may overburden them. Because this is a loan, and based on our funding source, this is not CARES funding. This is from the Economic Development Administration through a revolving loan fund. So these are funds that we have to get back because we recycle these and recirculate these funds as they are paid back to us. So unfortunately, this is not a program that's going to have forgiveness. So in order to apply, we're going to need to see 2019 business taxes. But of course, for businesses that open in 2020, you can admit that because you won't have 2019 business taxes. We will also require a 2020 profit and loss statement and a 2020 balance sheet. And one thing that I want to talk about with the 2020 profit and loss and 2020 balance sheet, we understand that 2020 was a really hard year. And so if you experience losses, or you're a little bit apprehensive about what those financial documents are going to look like, please do bear in mind that we are taking that into account. We understand that, we don't expect to see businesses, having an amazing year in 2020 financially. So I don't want that to discourage anyone. And as Linda mentioned, we do partner with the MBDA. And so there are some opportunities if you, say, do not have an accountant or you don't have a bookkeeper. There are opportunities to get that assistance with the MBDA and get those documents prepared. But as Linda said, it's first come, first served, because the funds that we have available to pay for those services are very limited. But it is an option that we do have. And so I kind of wanted to address, before we even get to the question section, some frequently asked questions that we get. So what's the interest rate on the loan, and is it a fixed interest rate? So the interest rate is 4% or 75% of prime rate, whichever is lower, which right now the 75% of prime rate is lower. I believe last time that we looked, it was about, I think, 2.44%, I believe. And so it's a really good interest rate. I mean, especially for a commercial loan. Will interest accrue while payments are deferred? Yes, interest will be accruing on your loan while you are in deferment. But because it's such a low percentage, we hope that that's not going to be too burdensome for the businesses who are interested in pursuing this loan. Are there penalties for prepayment? There are not. If you find yourself in a better position in 2021 and business is doing great and you want to pay the loan off early, you are more than welcome to do that, and there are no penalties. And also, too, if you want to start paying while you're in deferment, you may also do that as well. Will my credit be pulled? We will be pulling credit reports. But another thing that people ask about that is if there's a minimum credit score. There's not. Because, like Carol said, we have identified that there are issues in the lending system, especially for minority-owned businesses. We try to be as flexible as we can with credit reports, and we try to approach them with a holistic view while still following, typical banking procedures. But what that means is that we are looking at specific things in the credit report. We understand that things happen, but the types of things that we're looking at is, are you current on, your accounts? Do you have a lot of delinquencies? Maybe you had an account fall into collections 2 years ago, but you've been good on your payments. Those are the kinds of things that we will take into account. And so we understand that there's more to the story when it comes to a credit report than just simply the score. So we try to dive a little bit deeper into that credit report, and we are willing to make justifications for businesses that we feel have a strong chance of survival and success. And we're willing to make arguments for some lower credit scores. And lastly, how will businesses be selected? And is it first come, first served? So this program is not first come, first serve. We'll be opening up, we're anticipating a launch date of January 27th. That could change, but currently that's the schedule that we're moving forward on. The application should be open for about 2 weeks. And then once we've received all applications, myself and my colleague will go through the process of underwriting every application. And so the underwriting will include a scoring system, and then we will do some financial analysis of the financial documents. And then the businesses that score the highest based on the financial analysis in our scoring system will then be selected. However, like I mentioned, if you do need assistance with your financial documents, that is first come, first serve. So you'll want to try to get in contact as soon as possible. Lastly, we are also another thing that we are doing and we're implementing for the very first time is that we are going to be working with community navigators. And these are organizations that the city has contracted with to help us increase applications. Because in our previous loan program, as well as some grant programs that we've done, we've realized that our numbers are falling kind of short in specific communities. And we realize that as the city, we have some of our built-in networks, but not everybody is in our networks and we're missing people. And so we want to make sure that we can utilize community organizations that have long-standing relationships with their communities that can help us to also break down barriers and also increase trust as the city, because we realize that as a government, we're not always seen as everyone's best friend and advocate. And so we're going to be working with the Latino Community Fund, Asia Pacific Cultural Center, the Tacoma Urban League, Latinx Unidos of the South Sound, and a consultant, Whitney M. Dixon, and they are going to be working with businesses in the community to basically help market the loan, kind of talk to people about the loan, help those communities understand that this is for them, and that, we want them to apply for these programs as well. And they'll also be providing some language proficiency services as well. So if you would feel more comfortable kind of working with one of these community organizations as opposed to necessarily directly with us, you can definitely reach out to them as well. And they we've got a pipeline in place to work with those community navigators. And this is something that we're really excited about. And so hopefully this is something that we can continue to implement in the future with other programs. And so I have my contact information here on the slide. So if you have any questions after this, you can give me a call or shoot me an email. We also have our website, makeittacoma.com. That is where our application and everything is going to be housed, our FAQs, our overview of the loan, and that should be going up pretty soon. We're just working with IT to get some information onto the website ahead of launch as well. And we also constantly are updating that website with resources, both local, state, county, federal, just any programs that we think are of particular interest to small businesses right now is housed there. And I'll also open it up if anyone has any questions.
Thank you, Deidre. Great presentation.
Thank you.
So we are allotted the time on the chat box, so feel free to write your questions. But I do have a question, Deirdre, about the process, how long it takes for the process, for the application. So the turnaround, like, just so as a business, we're waiting for the process, we're just relying for this loan, so.
It really all just depends on how many applications we get. Last time we got about almost 500 inquiries. After we determined eligibility, I think we ended up with about 250 eligible businesses that we proceeded with underwriting, and that process took us about 2.5 weeks. It's just two of us. It's myself and my colleague Will Suarez who are doing the underwriting, but we are hoping that we can fit in the underwriting process within 2 to 3 weeks. And so once the underwriting process is complete, we will then reach out to those businesses who've been selected, and then we will request documents for our loan closing. And so just depending on how quickly businesses can get back to us with our their loan closing documents, once we have those, it's fairly quick. We get them to our purchasing and financing folks, they get entered into our system, and once they're entered into the system, we can issue the payment pretty quickly. But again, it's just a matter of how many applications we get, how quickly we underwrite, and how quickly we get those closing documents back.
Perfect. And another question is, so you mentioned about the eligibility, right? So I think you mentioned about full-time, the FTE for 40 hours. So a lot of firms that work with us, they are like a one-man person, like a one-man show. So is that considered like the one FTE, right? So
yeah, like we'll ask how many full-time equivalent employees do you have, including the owner? Yeah.
Okay.
And again, I know that some of the other programs that were out were definitely more friendly towards those businesses who had more employees or larger employees, or a lot of businesses who didn't have employees on payroll, or they're the only employee, kind of had a hard time going through those processes. This is a program that also is geared towards those single man or woman operated own operations too, and we had plenty of those in our first loan. So this is definitely micro business friendly, and we tried to make the application as simple as possible while still following traditional banking guidelines. But we'd like to think that it's pretty user friendly.
Okay. So again, so we don't have any more. Okay, there is another question here.
We have a question coming through the chat. People are wondering if it's going to be a soft pull or a hard pull on their credit.
More likely than not, it will be a hard pull.
So another question, since you mentioned about the location, right? But from the city of Tacoma. So if the business has two offices, like a satellite office, is that something that people could consider, to apply? So let's say I have a business in Seattle and we have another business like location in Tacoma. Can the business owner apply for that?
Yeah, so if you have a physical business, if you have more than one location and you have a physical location in Tacoma and you have a lease, that's totally fine. We have run into some troubles with folks who operate out of a co-working space rather than like an actual office. So that gets kind of murky. We prefer that you have a lease that directly ties you to Tacoma, because this money can only be used for Tacoma-based businesses.
So let's say if somebody operates through the incubator, it's like you guys have a Tacoma incubator, can they apply for that loan?
By which like incubator program do you mean?
Like a small business incubator location, because they have like you mentioned earlier, the co-space, because it's like that's a kind of like a new trend now. A lot of like
Yeah.
businesses, yeah.
Yeah.
Is that
We are going to want to see a lease, to be quite honest, that you are tied down to Tacoma specifically, and that, you know, if you just have a desk, that doesn't necessarily mean that you are really truly located in Tacoma. And again, that's something that we've run into before.
Jessica?
Pedro, we have two questions coming through the chat. If the business does not fit with the loan program that you're offering, do you refer other products or
Yes.
other loan programs?
We certainly don't. Even when it's a no from us, we don't like to leave people off at a dead end. And the thing is too, once you apply to any of our programs, you kind of are then put into like our database, and we push out information as we receive it about all programs, and we try to send that out to as many folks as possible. Of course, if you start to feel like we're bombarding you with too much information, you can always request to be removed from our mailing list. But we are definitely always giving folks a redirect so that it's not just a no, because we want to make sure that if there's help available, even if it's not our program, that we're providing everyone with the most up-to-date information and that they can access additional resources.
Can you go into details on how the application process is handled online?
Yes. So we typically, what we do is we have like a pre-application intake screening form, which just basically asks some really basic prerequisite questions that basically will let us know if your business is in Tacoma, and maybe how many employees, to make sure that you meet the employee count, because we don't want to just have folks wasting time filling out an entire application, submitting us their financial documents, and turns out they're not even in Tacoma. So we do that pre-screening so that we can make sure that we're getting applications from businesses that are in fact qualified. So once we close the pre-intake form, we'll go through, determine eligibility, and then we will send the full application to those who were qualified. Typically it's through DocuSign. We are also trying to explore if potentially we could do it completely integrated through our website, as DocuSign can be kind of clunky. But we're just awaiting to hear from our IT department if that's something that we can do based on, if our website is encrypted enough and safe enough for us to be receiving those financial documents.
Is there a threshold on minimum loan amount given?
No. So if in our last program, we did up to 15,000, and we had businesses who only asked for 5,000. We even had a business that asked for 3,000. I think businesses, can determine how much they want or that they need. And so there's no minimum threshold, because we want, we understand some people are like, hey, I only need $4,000. So we're not going to force you to take more than what you need.
So if a business currently do receive or have received PPP or EIDL loans, can they still apply for the program?
Yes, you can still apply for our program regardless of if you have received funds elsewhere. However, you're just going to want to be aware of how you are spending those funds that you got previously, because as with all programs, you want to make sure that you are avoiding duplication of benefit. And so what that means is if you have received another grant or loan and you indicated that you are going to pay January to April's rent with that money, and then you get our loan, you can't then declare that you're going to use this money for rent from January to April as well. So you'll just want to make sure that you're really keeping track of the funds that you're receiving, how you've delegated those uses, so that you're making sure that everything is separate and that they're not doubling on top of each other, because you can get in trouble with the government if you are doing a duplication of benefit. So I just want to make sure that you're keeping as best records as possible on how you're spending your money.
Sure.
You mentioned that the application will be online around January 27th. How long would it be open for?
Typically, we leave it open for about 2 weeks. And I do also want to mention, we will have the application also available in 5 languages. So it will also be available in Spanish, Korean, Vietnamese, Khmer, and Russian. And we do realize that not everybody is super tech savvy. We are willing to be able to give and receive physical applications. We can email people PDF form for them to print. We've even, some people are like, I don't have a printer. Is there a way I can pick one up? We can arrange a time to safely, with all the COVID, health department suggestions, to safely give and receive applications as well, because again, we realize that not everyone is as technologically savvy.
Also, Deidre, I have another question. So you mentioned earlier that the purpose of the loan, you have the list. So how about if the small business owners would like to use the loan to pay for like tax? Is that possible?
Yes. I mean, you can use it. It's pretty like flexible. So when I say that this particular loan is very advantageous to any business who needs capital out there, because it just does not simply carry as much red tape and restrictions as the other programs out there. So I would really encourage you guys to look into it once we have more information, or if you have lingering questions after this, to just reach out to me directly if you're still having some trouble understanding exactly how this works, or maybe you just don't have experience with taking on loans, because there are still businesses out there that have not received anything. And it can be kind of intimidating. And I just want to make sure that you guys are aware that I can speak for the city of Tacoma, that myself and my colleagues and the staff at the city of Tacoma, we are very willing to help walk people through the process of understanding how these work. So please do not hesitate to reach out to me, because we are more than willing to work with you.
Okay. Jessica, do you have any questions?
Could someone work through your community representative that you indicated earlier, and then have help in that application process?
Yes. So the community navigators that we're working with are not technical assistance providers. So they can't help you with like your books or your financial documents. However, if you just need help simply filling out the application, that's what they're there for. So if you need somebody to kind of walk with you step by step through the application, if there's things that you're not understanding, that's what those community navigators are there for.
This is super great. I've been working with a lot of small businesses in the past, particularly with the loan system, and you guys are making it. I mean, with, all the red tapes, all the barriers. I mean, this is great. So, and again, you guys, if you have any questions, please let us know. I think there's another question, right?
Can you confirm or reconfirm the lower and upper limit of the FTE to be eligible for the program?
It's 20 or fewer full-time equivalent employees.
So if the company has like a subcontractor, so it's not quite an employee, so
yeah,
it could count that too.
In our last application, we did ask for contractors, because we even took into account like hair salons. Sometimes they're not employees, but they have contractors. And so I do believe, I have to double check, that there might be a section for you to list number of contractors and number of employees. But again, based on data that we have, like over 90% of businesses in Tacoma do not have 20 or more full-time equivalent employees or contractors.
Yeah, because I was working with hair salon owner for the grant, and then they were asking about, the employees, and she said, well, I have 5 people renting the space, yep, but I can't pay my rent. So I need, some sort of a loan to help me with those people, because they can't pay me, I can't pay the rent. Yep. So I think this is a great program. I really, really appreciate your hard work, guys, trying to understand what small business needs. Believe me, I'm like shocked that you have like that flexibility from the credit score, like of collateral and stuff like that. So this is great. So guys, if you have more questions, this is the time. We have like 5 or 10 minutes to ask more questions. So feel free to ask. Let me check if there are any more.
And I'll drop my contact information in the chat box too, just in case anyone didn't catch it in my presentation. So.
And also, we will be happy to create a list with the partners who provide the assistance to help with the application. You mentioned earlier you work with the community group, but like there are a lot of assistance out there. I know that Business Impact, they have some resources to go, and MBDA, I've been working with MBDA a lot, and DBE support service. So yeah, feel free to send us email and we will make it happen. So thank you so much, Deirdre, for great presentation. I really appreciate the information, and I'm actually really surprised with all this presentation, how you guys making it happen to our community. This is great. I'm really appreciate your hard work. Thank you.
Thank you.
So since we don't have any questions, so we should take probably 5-minute break. What do you think, guys? I'm asking. What do you think, Linda?
Yes, let's do 2 minutes.
Okay.
So we can get rolling. And I just want to know that, yes, there's also Pierce County. What I'd like for you to know is that if it's not Tacoma, then there's Pierce County that's available, and then the state. So if you reach out to us, again, we'll definitely be able to connect you to those other funding sources too. So again, don't think, oh, I'm in Pierce County, I'm not in Tacoma, that, we can't help. We definitely can. So with that, let's take 2 minutes.
Okay, so we are going to take a 2 minutes break. I think we're going to be back for 10:47. So get a little stretch, get a glass of water, so we get more information after this. Thank you. Want to make sure everybody's back. It's 10:47. Oh, we're like ahead of time here. Great.
All right. I'm gonna leave my video off in this presentation, and then I can always turn it on during the panel.
Okay. So our second presenter is a close friend in my heart, because Graham is one of the biggest small business supporter. Graham Ralston, he's what else? Like, you have a lot, Graham. So I don't even have any sheets to talk about what you've done to help small business. Graham is an attorney and also a CPA certified. Graham was the senior executive at U.S. Department of Transportation, Office of Small and Disadvantaged Business Utilization. He worked for 8 years to help small business. He actually part of the underwriting group at the US DOT, Office of Small and Disadvantaged Business Utilization. I worked with Graham a lot in the past, helping small business with the short-term lending program. We work closely with DBEs, minority, woman-owned, name it, small emerging businesses. So today, Graham was going to talk about tax issues on PPP, EIDL, and also some grant opportunities. So Graham, take it away.
All right. Thank you, Lily. I'm excited to be here with everyone today. Thank you to the city of Tacoma. Thank you, MBDA, Linda, Lily. Lily and I go back. I want people to know my roots go back to Port Angeles, Washington, born and raised. And my passion for small businesses really starts with my upbringing there. For anyone that's been to some of our small rural towns, you know that a lot of our businesses are mom and pop shops. So my passion really started at a young age, and my roots are here in Washington, having also gone to University of Washington for undergrad and law school at Seattle U, where I also participated in the small and disadvantaged entrepreneurship clinic that they have there. And then going on to Washington, D.C., where I worked for the Office of Small and Disadvantaged Business Utilization. Was back there from 2010 through 2018, including as the acting director for OSDBU. And I can tell you that you've got a great team of people that are here, not only the presenters, but I had the pleasure of working a lot with Lily and a little bit with Linda, and the people that are here and supporting you are rock stars. It's a pleasure to be working with these people, and you've got a great team, and utilize them. Right? They're here, they're giving you your time, they go the extra mile, and make sure that you're utilizing them to leverage to grow your business. As Lily mentioned, I am a practicing attorney and a CPA, and I've been in private practice now in Washington State for a couple years. What I wanted to talk with everyone here about today, a couple of the items are grants, financing, negotiation, and adaptability. As you can see, I put grants here first. Why do I talk about grants first? Because it's quote unquote free money. It's your first priority. Deidre used a word earlier in her presentation talking about not to overburden the business with a loan. Well, that may mean you get a loan and you're paying interest on it, and it doesn't make sense for you. You're putting on additional burden that doesn't meet your actual need. A grant is a low burden for a high reward. If you can spend an hour or two applying for a grant and the return is $10,000, $20,000, $30,000, that's probably one of the best investments of your time that you can make. Grants first before loans. There's no repayment for grants. So that's why my presentation is structured in that sense, that we're talking about grants first, because that should be your mindset and your thinking, that you should be going after these grants first as top priority. Well, what kind of grants are available? Most of you, unfortunately, the PPP program is closed right now. We'll talk about some updates and what can happen in the future. But where are we at with that first round? Well, there's no new applicants. There is a streamlined application for businesses who received a loan underneath 50,000. There's a proposal in Congress right now to have a streamlined application for businesses underneath 150,000. As long as you're still within your timeline for forgiveness, which all of us are going to be underneath, we still have time to apply for that forgiveness, which is 10 months from the end of our forgiveness window, whether we made the 8-week election or 24-week election. You could sit and wait and see if the $50,000 streamlined application is increased to $150,000. The other applications for forgiveness are an easy application and then a full length application. And each application is decided by how many employees you had hired and whether or not you fall into certain exemptions. We're not going to go into those specific details. If you have questions about PPP forgiveness and where you might fall, I'm available as a resource. Please feel free to reach out to me, and we can talk specifically about maybe what option may work best for you. The interest on any amount that is not forgiven underneath your PPP loan, if your loan was issued before June 5, then you have a 2-year repayment period. If it was after June 5, 2020, then you have a 5-year repayment period. most clients and businesses that I've worked with have been strategic about maximizing their forgiveness and have been able to get a full forgiveness, which is why it's considered a grant, right? If you're able to convert that into a forgiveness amount. Well, what's one of the big issues though with forgiveness that some of you may have seen some news about? It's tax implications. Okay, if you received a PPP loan for $100,000 and you had $75,000 in payroll and $25,000 in rent and other expenses that was forgiven, typically in a business year, if you had $150,000 of total revenue and just that $100,000 of expenses, you would typically be able to write off the full $100,000 as an expense to your business. Well, if that $100,000 is now forgiven, you will no longer be able, at least at this time, to write that $100,000 off as an expense. What does that mean? You're going to have probably a significant tax bill next year. There are associations lobbying Congress to make this change. I don't expect the change to take place because the Treasury Secretary seems adamant about their position. So I would plan for the fact that you are going to that you will have a higher tax bill, that you will not be able to write off that expense. And only if it changes, then you look at that as a bonus. So plan that you're going to have a higher tax bill. Plan now to be paying a higher amount of tax next year. Okay, I want to emphasize that. As you're planning, okay, and paying tax bills, there's a very high likelihood there's going to be another round of PPP. What is that going to look like? It's probably going to have very similar characteristics to what you had to use to apply in the first round. How many of you on this call, I'm raising my hand right now. I know you don't see me on the video, but I'm raising my hand to say I was one of those business owners that in that first round, okay, it was a race to get applications in. No one knew, that money was disappearing so fast. We didn't know at that time if Congress was going to open up another round or not. And some banks were processing loans, others were not. It was a very stressful situation, and people thought it was kind of like the lottery. Like, am I going to get in? Am I not? I was in that boat. Am I going to get approved? Am I not? What you can do going into this next round is make sure that everything is prepared, right? That you're ready to go, that your taxes are paid, right? State, federal level, your payroll reports are all put together. So that if they launch something and then there's a short timeline for application, you've got everything together. Okay, don't wait for the last minute. I heard Linda mention that they've got a bookkeeper available to help people. Take advantage of these technical resources if you need them. Okay, make sure that your financials, your 941s, that's your federal payroll reports, all documents that were initially requested in the first PPP. You can all go to sba.gov and see what was requested. Make sure you have all that documentation up to date so that if there is another round released, you're taking advantage of it. This was a great program to leverage because it's quote unquote free money. It was a low burden to apply. Okay. Yes, there's some additional timekeeping that's there. Yes, there's a forgiveness period. If you're above that $50,000 threshold right now, banks have 60 days to review and give an approval, and each bank has their own different underwriting, and then the SBA has 90 days. I may have flip-flopped that. It may be the inverse of 90 days and then 60 days, but it's about a 150-day period there. What other grants can you go after? Well, Washington State has a Working Washington grant. The priority deadline was December 11th. but applicants can still receive consideration for that grant. This is the third round, so there's no reason to not expect maybe even another round. Continue staying up to date on these resources. Low burden, high reward. Okay, there's also a link, and Lily, I'll save this presentation as a PDF if you guys haven't shared it already, and we can make sure that we send this out so that businesses can have a direct link to some of these some of these resources.
So Graham, I'm sorry to interject before we forget, because there is a question here from Karen.
Okay.
I am in the process of starting a food truck business. I will apply for an SBA loan. Are there any grants for businesses who want to be green or environmentally friendly?
Yes, there are grants for that. And that, off the top of my head, let's see here. Grant, I put on here nonprofit and private entity search site. Now, I'm not aware of any government grants off the top of my head. I think City of Tacoma had some sustainability grants that were suspended during COVID. And if there's a representative that can talk about that, I don't know if sustainability goes to food trucks, but this grant specific search site, there's going to be organizations across the United States that give out grants, whether they're private entities, associations, nonprofits. And I put together some of this grant research in about an hour and a half time last night. Everyone here has the capability of going and researching these grants and finding out, what is your niche? Are you going to fit into some of these grant opportunities? Once again, low burden, high reward. If you spend that time applying for a grant for your food truck and it takes you, let's say, 5 hours to apply to 5 different grants with 5 different organizations, an hour, for each. Let's say you're only approved for one grant and it's $5,000. That's still $1,000 an hour. That's a great return on your time as a business owner. Okay. I'm not saying every grant's going to be guaranteed. There's going to be some failure. There's going to be some rejection. It's about getting past that and continuing to put applications out there. Okay.
Thank you, Graham.
Yeah. City of Tacoma grant assistance. Okay. There's rental assistance. There's tax relief. There's Puget Sound energy relief. There's financial support, which we heard in the previous presentation. So don't just think about a direct grant for your business and, a blanket grant. Maybe it's energy relief for your business. Maybe there's some kind of tax relief. What if, and we're going to talk a little bit about this later though too, what about negotiation? If you have a landlord, maybe you're not eligible for a grant, but in your research, if you find out that you have a landlord that's eligible for rental assistance and you say, hey, landlord, I'm going to apply for this grant on your behalf. I'll do all the paperwork. If you get it, then you forgive my rent for 6 months. Okay. And also Washington State has some rental assistance grants as well. If you proceed with that, it's not just thinking about grants for yourself. It's what about a landlord? What about someone else that you're doing business with? If you work together as a community and whether it's customers, vendors, people that you're in business with, and you help them apply for a grant and they receive it, now maybe they can give you a break in another financial situation that you're working with them on, right? It could be a win-win scenario. That's exactly a case here potentially with a landlord. Think outside the box. Think about, if you save that landlord $1,000 a month in rent for 6 months, they could potentially pass that all on back to you. And I know we jumped to this slide earlier, nonprofit, private entities. There's a full list here, full site, nonprofits, private entities, associations across the country, Comcast, banks, United Way, even Guy Fieri, who likes dinners, drive-ins, and dives. He had a grant opportunity. I think he raised somewhere around $5 million for restaurant workers, right? And maybe you're a restaurant owner and you care about your employees and you want to see them get funding. All kinds of different programs. And it's our responsibility, though, to go out and seek them out. Okay, can't expect everyone to be giving you all of that. But once again, it's a low burden, high reward. You spend 5 hours. If it's worth 5,000, that's worth it. Okay, spend that initial time looking for grants. All kinds of money that's going out the door right now. Go ahead and try and capture that. You can be as creative as GoFundMe. Okay, a lot of people want to help right now. You may have customers that are thinking, the retail shop that I normally go to is shut down, the restaurant shut down. How can you, as a business owner, think creatively to where that person has an opportunity to help you? Is it GoFundMe? Is it another online charitable donation site? Because us as members of your community want to see you be around, not only as compassion for one another as human beings, but also we want our favorite restaurant around, right? We want the community, we want the good food. It's an ecosystem in our community. I think about Port Angeles. If we lose our restaurants there, how is that going to affect tourism in future seasons? How is that going to then affect hotels? And if there's no hotels or restaurants, how are you going to attract good labor to the market? And if you can't attract good labor, how is it going to affect other businesses that want to grow? It's a full ecosystem. People want to help. People want to contribute. You want to make sure that you're providing people avenues to contribute to your success and your sustainability. Financing, I'm not going to spend a lot of time here because we have a full panel next to talk specifically about financing opportunities. I'm going to jump back to what Deidre said already. You don't want not to overburden the business. You don't just think, oh, I can go get a $200,000 loan. No, you don't want to think more money is always better. You need to think about what does my financial sheet look like? What do I actually need? What kind of capacity do I actually need to continue my business operations, but also maybe go after contracts? You want to make sure that it makes sense, because financing in comparison to grants costs money. Grants does cost your time, but if you're paying a 4% interest rate on a $200,000 loan, that's a $8,000 expense every year for your business. Okay, don't overburden your business, because it is exciting to say here that a bank's going to approve you for a loan, but make sure it makes sense. There's loan opportunities at the city, state, federal government level, private opportunities, private lender opportunities, and you also have the SBA's Economic Injury Disaster Loan Program, which is available right now. 3.75% for private lender, or for private companies, 2.75% for nonprofit. Repayment period over 30 years. Low barrier to entry. You're going to need your taxes, including a tax transcript from the IRS directly provided to the SBA. There's funding still available if you're interested in exploring that. Negotiation in these times. We talked a little bit about this. Are you in a lease or a contract? You can reach out to your landlord, negotiate deal terms, apply for rent assistance with that, and talk to your vendors. I'm going back to this as being an ecosystem. You should not feel the pain by yourself. We all share in this, and people are willing to chip in. I can speak for myself that with my restaurant clients and clients that have been completely shut down, a lot of the work is pro bono. Not only, or my clients, some of my friends, but also you look at sustainability. If they're not around in a couple years, they're not a client for me. Okay. Make sure that the people that you work with understand that. If you're not around, how is your landlord going to get paid? If you're not around, how is your vendor going to get paid? How can they share in the pain of what you're going through? And usually you're going to find more compassion there, where people are not only out of a sense of community are going to be willing to work with you, but also out of a sense of sustainability, that it's smart business, that when we come out of this, they want the customer, they want the ecosystem. When we look specifically at contracts, something that's come up in COVID times is something called force majeure, meaning an act of God. Some leases may have an act of God. Is COVID considered an act of God to get out of a lease or a contract? It's not completely clear, but as you're signing new contracts and new leases, just make sure that you're aware of that, to protect yourself. Okay, or as you're entering into any of these negotiations, and see if it lists anything specifically about COVID. Last but not least, adaptability. We all need to have an open mind. None of us were expecting COVID. None of us were expecting the recession in 2009. There's going to be more unexpected events in our future. That's the only thing that is certain. As Benjamin Franklin said, there's certainty in death and taxes. There's also certainty in that there's going to be other uncertainties in our future, whether it's another COVID, another recession. So what can you do? You can always be adaptable and have an open mind. And it's those that are able to adapt to these changing circumstances and whatever comes up that are going to survive and thrive. In some of these changing times, how are you adapting to those grant resources that are available? How are you adapting to potential increases in government spending? How are you partnering with other businesses to potentially reduce overhead and find cost efficiencies? If more of our work is virtual and from home, if there's less people in the office, how are you rotating or maybe combining with other people to share some kind of overhead through an employee that's physically present, while also reducing who's at an actual physical location? Work together. Always that abundance theory, community. The more we work together, the more we thrive together. Okay. How is your business planning for life post-COVID? There's been some interesting discussions about work from home model and how it's here to stay. If that happens, they're projecting at least a 10% reduction in spending in urban areas. If you're a restaurant in an urban area in Tacoma, how are you going to make up that 10% shortfall? What are you going to do differently? You don't wait for, expect that the vaccine is going to return everything to normal, because even if people are getting healthier, there's still the psychology and a shift in how people go about living their lives. Don't expect everything to be changing within this next year. It may take years for things to change. So adapting your business to work in worst case scenarios is how you're going to find success. You're the person that's going to have that answer. We are the professionals that are here to help you with that adaptation. We're here to brainstorm with you or to help make sure, see through your vision or your creativity. But it's also working with your peers and other business owners and being engaged like you are today, to be proactive in problem solving in terms of taking the right step. Overall, make sure that you're taking your safety, making sure that you're safe and healthy first. If you're not around, your business isn't around, that should always be your first priority for you and your community. Second, grants. Third, financing. Fourth, don't be afraid to ask, negotiate, work with vendors, work with landlords. Allow people the opportunity to share the burden that you bear right now of COVID, of what's impacting your business. Last but not least, continue to adapt, have an open mind. I know it's a tough time for everyone. Let's continue to work together, shift our mindset in a positive way, and think about solutions and potential and opportunities rather than keeping our mindset in a place of COVID is happening to us. Let's find ways to overcome COVID, not just now, but in the years to come, and how it changes our society and how we conduct our business. Happy to take questions. I know I'm on the next panel. Happy to do pro bono work if it's PPP, answering questions on federal financing or grant opportunities. I have a passion for small business. I have a passion for Washington State and helping our community. Please feel free to reach out.
Thank you so much, Grams. What a great presentation. I really like your sayings that you said that thinking outside the box. I actually had an experience with a client of mine who was struggling because of COVID. He actually called PSE asking for help for the utility bills. They gave it to him 3 months free, utility expense. I mean, never thought about it, but he said, hey, let's try. So I think, just thinking outside the box, get the help from everybody. I mean, we're trying to help the community. And yeah, but I think I have another question too. So I was helping a client to apply for the grant, the new third round grant, Washington State. And he mentioned he get rejected because he doesn't have enough employee.
Mm-hmm.
What do you think that he should do? Like, I mean, he's in the fitness industry. He can't, go to work because they shut down the facility. And he told me I needed the grant just to survive. And he missed the PPP. So what do you think, should this company do?
I think whether it's him or any other, whether he's a sole proprietorship or a sole owner of an LLC, I look at, what has the federal government done for PPP, right? Which if you're a sole owner, they're looking at your tax returns to see how are you pay, did you pay yourself? Were you an actual employee of the organization? And I would appeal to the state with those tax returns if they show not only the business and revenue tax returns that they are paying in Washington State, but also the federal returns showing, hey, I had business income. I was paying myself as an employee of my own organization. And if there's that kind of documentation, it's hard for the state then to say, no, you weren't an employee. They may have more of a case if someone doesn't have, if they have, let's say, $1,000 in revenue for the year, and they're kind of they say that they're a business, but yet maybe they didn't actually do any work and they're trying to get a $20,000 grant, right? Does it make a lot of sense for someone that has only earned $1,000 in revenue to get a $20,000 grant? Probably not, right? You need to look at the equity of the situation. And I think, if you look at the equity, right, did he have over $20,000 in income that he claimed as an employee, that's what he earned for the year? Maybe he had $60,000 in revenue, but $20,000 as an employee. If he can show that, and one, that should already qualify him. Number two, if he can also show a downturn in what he's lost this year compared to last year, find and tap into the compassion and urge the government to say, here's our data, here's our facts. This business owner brought this in and paid themselves this amount last year, and this was reported on our taxes, right? It's hard to argue against a tax return. It's easier to argue against a self-prepared financial statement. So that's going to be key in any kind of appeal for any small business owner, and in particular, the one that you mentioned.
I see. And another thing that, I was running into when I was working with these people, especially with the grant, you mentioned the deadline is like December 11. And I know some of my clients said we missed it. And you mentioned, maybe contact the state and ask for consideration. So how do you do that? So just email, because like some of this business owner, they don't know what to do. So they're like, yeah, we just missed it. And, it's really frustrating because some of them, they didn't know until the last day. And I mean, do you have any suggestion? It's just kind of like, like maybe emailing the people, or I know that SBDC, Small Business Development Center, are working closely helping, with the grant. Is there any possibility for these business owners to talk to somebody? I mean, it's easy just, talk to the state, but who, I mean, that's like the state, they have a lot of like departments and they're like,
Right.
yeah, they
There's
can't
always
even figure it out.
there's always possibilities. Okay, I want to start there. That as small business owners, we're all in the business of sales, right? If we're our own owner, and you can't just take rejection as a way to shut down your business and forget about it. I brought this up in the presentation. There's going to be rejection on some of these grant opportunities. It's still better to take the chance and be rejected than to not take the chance at all. There's another quote that I like from Wayne Gretzky, a famous hockey player. Yeah, you make 0% of the shots you don't take. Okay, even if you're only hitting 20% of the shots on grants, okay, that's going to be great for you as a business owner. And yes, email, your state representative. If it's a state grant, then you reach out to your state representative, not the federal congressional member, but the state representative, right? You want to make them aware that, hey, I need help. Hey, here's a program I'm trying to get in. Can you leverage your representative? Get them involved. Email the state. Have documentation. Have a letter, right? The more organized you are, right? And Lily, this is going to go back to what we were talking about before. Plan ahead. Have your taxes in order, your financials in order, because it's applicable not only for grant opportunities right now, but what's going to be coming out, whether it's another PPP program, new grant programs. Some of our business owners say, I don't have that together. And that happened with some of my clients. So it's like, I don't have it together. I'm not going to put in the time to organize that stuff. A couple hours, right? Or working with a bookkeeper. Linda said that there's one available as a resource. Could be worth thousands and thousands of dollars. Lily, the answer, going back to your question, don't take no for an answer, okay? Overcome that wall, overcome that challenge, push on, still ask for consideration. You brought up the client that, reached out to Puget Sound Energy, got 3 months off, right? Probably didn't take a lot of time and earn, it's free, quote unquote, free money for the client. Plus, it's worth the shot. Take it. We're all entrepreneurs. We already all took the gamble to start our business. We all know that that's a risk. All of us should have the risk tolerance in us to say, I'm going to take a risk and apply for some of these grant opportunities too.
Hey, Lily.
Yes, Bizan. Hi.
Hi, how are you?
Good. How are you?
May I ask a question? Hey, Graham, thank you.
Go ahead.
Yes.
Yeah, Graham, I started my business in 2019, late 2019. And for 3 months of 2019, we have some income. And we, filed the tax and everything very properly. Beginning of 2020, first 3 months, we did not have enough revenue to make payroll. So and also we did not have a payroll company established. We established our payroll after March, April, and then we applied for the PPP, and we got some, it's almost 50% of our revenue or the money that profit that we make in 3 months of 2019. So that question is now, we are trying to, our loan is with the Bank of America is the one who processed our application.
With?
Bank of America.
Okay.
So what they're saying now is, asking for information that we need to show that, our payroll in the first 3 months, say April, February or March, to show that, we are making payroll up to then, and then we could not make it due to COVID. Due to COVID, definitely it impacted our business. We are able to keep running since we got the support, but we don't have record of payroll in March or February of 2020.
Based on what you just shared with me, okay, and my understanding is that you received the PPP based upon revenue or income back to the business owners, which is eligible, right? As a owner of an LLC, if you're not basing the loan on payroll reports, then your forgiveness is statutorily set. So if it's a 24-week period, I think it's somewhere around $20,100, $20,000, couple $100 per owner is the maximum that you have automatically forgiven as part of your loan. So there should not be, if your loan request was not based on payroll reports, then there should not be a requirement to show payroll for that forgiveness.
Yeah, I do not want to take a lot of your time because there are maybe other questions, but we provided them the information they wanted for the PPP application, like for our tax, 941 or whatever the 1021, all the 11 something, the tax form and all these things. We do not know what was the basis for granting us the PPP. And the PPP, that amount that we got, what the amount you mentioned, we got 50% of that per person, okay, per owner. So we are well below the limit that you mentioned, that 20,000 or something, So I hope that we do not have to repay that money. That's what because we already used that for payroll.
Right. Well, I think that, the best way to do this is I'd be happy to look at your initial application and we can talk about this offline, and let me see it visually to see how the bank approved your loan. And then I can provide guidance on what that bank should actually be requesting of you to meet the forgiveness need. Were you underneath the 50? And we can talk, if you don't want to answer.
Yes, underneath 50, yes.
Yeah, you're under 50, then you should qualify for the streamlined application process then too. And do you know if the bank already had the portal up for the streamlined application when you started the forgiveness portion?
Yeah, they asked for some information, but the one information they were asking was the payroll for forgiveness. We could not provide the payroll because we did not do payroll in February, March.
Right.
We started payroll in April.
Yeah.
2020.
Yeah, they shouldn't need payroll for February or March because no one actually was in what is called a covered period, right? For the forgiveness, they should just be looking at what were you paying in the covered period, which most people received their loans in April, May, or maybe not even April, May, June, right? July, receiving the PPP loans. And that's when you look at payroll to compare against what should be forgiven.
Yeah, the one thing is, I think the thought that came across our mind, the reason they're asking for the payroll, maybe, correct me if I am wrong, that they want to see that if your business was running okay before COVID, like if you're making payment and everything until March and all of a sudden, after COVID, after April, you cannot make it, then you are more qualified for that type of support, they're trying to determine whether it is really COVID induced. That's my thought, That's why it is important to see the payroll, until March.
Well, that should only be based on generating the total amount of the loan. But if you've already received that shouldn't be retroactive.
Okay.
We can talk more about this offline. I'd be happy to solve this with you.
Bisan, I will be happy to set up a meeting between you and Graham. Graham working a lot with our clients and you participated in our class before. So yeah, I'll definitely set up a meeting so you guys could communicate more in detail, and then so Graham could help you, okay?
Yeah. So Lily, when you are back from holidays, maybe early January, what works best for Graham, we can do a meeting. Okay.
Sure.
We appreciate that.
Thank you, Bisan.
Yeah, if other people have questions, just to put a disclaimer, if you ask a question openly, it's not confidential, right? I think you are recording this conversation. So if anyone else has other questions, make sure that they're aware of that. I know I'm an attorney, so I'm just bringing that up, and I think
Sure.
Ms. On, you understand that, but I'm just making sure others, if they have questions, know that as
Yes.
well.
Graham, we have a question coming through the chat from Linda. She was wondering if when she's providing pro bono work, could she write that off as a deduction on her revenue?
Is it the nonprofit or the, no, I mean, generally a for-profit company could not, no.
Maybe-
I'm not sure about.
Maybe Linda, you wanna just, we still have time, by the way, because we are early. So this is a great opportunity for us to have a forum to take advantage of Graham being here. Yeah, Linda, you wanna unmute yourself and then maybe talk to Graham?
Yeah. Am I unmuted?
Yes.
Hi, Graham. Thank you guys for doing this today. This is very helpful and supportive of the community. I just had a question. When you were talking about the application process and you were talking about the annual amount that the company was making, the revenue, I was just wondering, for services, for instance, I have a law practice and I do a lot of pro bono work in the practice. And so in that application process, is there any consideration of that or not?
No, there's not, unfortunately.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah.
Grant, another question from our participants. For someone like Karen who is setting up her food truck business, do you have any recommendation on what she should watch out for, or maybe get her set up right, or advice to get her set up right as far as business entities or accounting and things like that?
Sure. Well, I think, you've got a great team to go with, whether it's Lily and her group or Linda and MBDA, and building that team of professionals, right? And it's also free, okay? Free resources. Take advantage of the free resources first before you go out and are paying for professionals that are higher priced. Okay. You've also got the Small Business Development Center networks, SBDC, which are part of SBA, and start there. So, as you're building your business, take advantage of those free resources before you're putting thousands of dollars into attorney's fees or CPA fees. See what you can do on your own. It's good to start building the team and figuring out who you want to grow with, though, so that when you do need those specific attorney needs, you already have someone that's a part of your team. I can't make a recommendation on business entity choice or what you should be doing without learning more about your business. But generally, a food truck should have some kind of shielded protection, meaning that you should be an LLC or a C Corp. You should be looking at an entity so that you can have risk mitigation to protect your personal assets in case there's some kind of liability event with your business. But it's not just about setting up the LLC, it's also making sure that your LLC is operating properly, whether that means setting up getting an EIN for your LLC, setting up a bank account, making sure that you're signing contracts as the name of the LLC and not.
And I'm telling you what,
capacity.
how that sleeving goes through those boxes,
and making sure that there's certain protections there. Those are some basic level legal advice. And I don't know, MBDA, if they're offering some of that, I'm happy to talk more about that with you. But start with the free resources, take advantage of it.
And I think, Graham, we have another, I think it's not a question, it's just more like a statement from Zuarel Blue. You want to talk to Graham? You want to ask Graham a question?
Yes, I do have a couple questions.
Sure.
So I have the only Black-owned detailing business here in Pierce County. I started it a couple years ago when I was doing construction. So I didn't really think.
You cut out. You're on mute.
You're muted.
Okay, there we go. Is that better?
Yeah, I heard the intro and then
All right, so
yeah.
I have a detailing business, Frontline Finish. It's the only Black-owned business here in Pierce County. I've definitely been declined from the PPE plenty of times, not knowing it is very imperative that we know what our credit score is as well. So in the midst of this whole COVID, I've been in nothing but survival mode. Like my landlord raising my rent, and I'm really pissed off about that. I'm trying to find out what direction to go. And in the midst of me starting my business, my credit score isn't the best, but it's getting better. I was able to reach out to an affordable accountant to pull up everything I was able to do that gave me confidence to start my business. I had a contract with Titusville dealerships, and I had a contract with U-Haul, and we were doing great until March. So everything stopped. But to go back on that, I filed only my personal taxes because I had a construction job prior to that. So now going into this year, for me to get anything, they're asking me for stuff that I don't have at the moment. All I have is guaranteed work. I have a letter of recommendation from both companies, and I have everything I was able to bring in until current. So how can I present that to someone who's actually willing to help me get through these next few months? Because I think the PPE sounds cool, but they told me it's 650 some credit score, so it's out of my way right now.
You shouldn't. So the credit, you might be talking about two different programs. There's the Paycheck Protection Program. I mean, that's expired right now, but even qualify if there's going to be another round, you're going to need to show income on your taxes for your business. So unless your construction job, if you're an independent contractor, you can actually find ways to qualify underneath your quote unquote independent contractor business. Okay. For 1099.
So with that, I actually worked for the union, and I got out the union because it was easier for me to work at home, and I had to take that drive.
Okay.
And so only taxes I filed were personal. Next year, I can start filing my business. So I don't have no business taxes currently. All I have until next year, all I have is just stuff that I was able to do this year alone.
Yeah. Well, I think I'm going to explain a little bit now, but I want to, make sure that you know that we can jump on another call, because when people talk about business taxes versus individual taxes, for a lot of us, individual tax does mean your business tax, right? If you're an LLC and tax is a disregarded entity, meaning you're not making an S Corp tax election, that's on your Schedule C and on your individual income tax return. If you're a 1099 or an independent contractor, that's also going to show up as pass-through income onto your individual income tax return. If you are a C Corp, you're going to have a separate tax for your corporation, okay? But the PPP program is going to be looking at your individual income tax return, your 1040, and your Schedule C underneath there. So I want to break that mindset that you have of thinking that they're two completely separate entities, okay? And I'd be happy to look at what your individual income tax return was for 2019, because if you were, I know you mentioned you work for a union, if you were 1099, you would still qualify for the PPP, which did not have a credit score requirement. Okay? You missed the first round, but you might qualify for the second round.
I'm going to lose my mind over here, man. And then my
that's why we're here.
You guys are killing me right now, man. Like, I am really tore up on the inside, but I can't let this fail. You see what I'm saying? I can't. So I'm taking odd and end jobs to pay what I got to, but how long am I going to keep having to do this?
Yeah.
So I appreciate it, and I definitely look forward to staying through this meeting and seeing what we can do.
Yeah.
The
credit score that you're talking about, that is for the EIDL. And you're right that there is a credit score requirement for that loan program. But I want you to continue to go back to those grants. There's going to be other grant opportunities. I want you, you brought up that you're a Black-owned business, okay? Take advantage of these different certification programs, whether it's 8A when you get there, or other minority business goaling contract opportunities, whether it's at the city, state, or federal level, to help grow your business. Okay, you've got experts like Lily and Linda and these other team members that are on this call today, and their organizations that are here to assist you and to give you advice and to guide you. Yes, you've got a contract in place. there's plenty of room to grow and expand. If there's a $1 trillion transportation bill, think about all the cars that maybe need detailing on transportation jobs. Does the police department need someone to come there and do detailing?
Yeah, we got our certifications, like for us MBE, SVE, and DBE. We did all of that, but it's like, where do we go now, kind of thing. So,
well, now,
okay, yeah.
I think Swirl, I will provide you with the email. We will discuss this in detail, so you could talk to Graham. And you're in Lakewood, right? You're part of.
Yeah, and that's another thing. Yeah, I'm in Lakewood. Lakewood don't have too many programs.
No, because Linda's group is gonna support you. So I will, after this event, we will provide the information to you. Because I think we have your email, or email us. I put my email information in the chat box.
Okay.
And there's another question, Graham, from Young. It says, I apply for EIDL, and is it forgivable?
The EIDL is not forgivable, no.
So, but I think the repayment is like what, 30 years?
Repayment is 30 years. If you're a private business, your interest rate is 3.75%. And depending upon the terms that you signed, you could have had deferment on the repayment for up to a year, meaning starting your repayment. So if you received it in April 2020, you may not have to start repaying until March, April 2021. Could be shorter, depends on the terms you agreed to.
Graham, we have a question coming through the chat. Is EIDL still available, and do you require a bank representative to apply on your behalf, or can you apply on your own?
EIDL is still available, and you can apply on your own through sba.gov.
Yeah. And also, we could always provide the information of Small Business Development Center. They're kind of like the appointed organization that could help out with the EIDL process. I put my email in the chat box, so feel free to email me. I'll follow up with you guys with the EIDL process. We work closely with SBDC counselors. And of course, we could always work with Linda's team. They are great. They work a lot of small business getting the EIDL. So yeah.
I want to emphasize 2 more points on that, Lily, which is one, because they asked, the question was about whether or not they had to go through a bank. Typically, SBA loans, you go through a lender to get an SBA loan. The EIDL is a direct loan program through the SBA. So there's no requirement that you go through an intermediary. You're applying directly to the SBA rather than through a lender. Number 2, I want to emphasize that I do not charge. All my work on EIDL and PPP is all pro bono and has been pro bono.
Thank you so much, Graham. Linda, you want to add a little bit, because we are early. We are on time, but this is great. It's such a great forum. So we, before we start our panel discussion, which is start at noon. So yeah, feel free to, add a little bit, Linda, with what you guys do.
Sure. So the MBDA, we do provide technical assistance. And earlier, I believe, I forgot his name, but he had a car detailing business. So for example, for your business, we are located in Tacoma, so I know you're in Lakewood, but just, do come and, actually our office is closed, but Malika or Jessica, can you just put my email address up so you can forward it to him? For your business, the most important thing is going to be on how you're going to pivot your current business model. So for example, your Google business listing, as well as your social media campaign, as well as, just how you're going to target market for profitability, looking at your cost controls and all that. Those are going to be the most important things for your business to be successful. And those are things that we can offer the technical assistance in. So again, please do email us and reach out to our office, and we cover the state of Washington. So it doesn't matter what jurisdiction or municipality you're in, we're here to support you. I think we're a little early, but I think we should just keep rolling with another, 5 minute break. No, 5 minutes may be too long, because people are like, okay, 1 o'clock, we want to roll it. So let's just give a couple minute break and just get started again, if all the panelists are ready.
But I have another question in the chat box. Graham, do you mind to answer questions here regarding PPP?
Yes, I will need to take a quick 2-minute break before the panel, but that's it. And then
Okay, yes, yes. It just said I applied for PPP and they approved for $800, $864, and they didn't pay me.
$864,
Yes.
and they didn't pay. Well, the bank pays you.
Right, that PPP is through the bank.
Right.
Economic Injury Disaster Loan is through the SBA. So
I
bank.
think that's the
you have to- yeah.
confusion. I think there's a confusion now because PPP and EIDL, they're not the same.
Correct.
Yeah. Oh, yeah, Young, hang on. Let me just unmute you, okay?
So Young, you need to check in with your bank and see why the bank is responsible for releasing those funds to you, not the SBA. So you need to check in with the bank and ask them why they're not releasing the 864 to you.
Can't hear you, Young. I think you're muted. Or maybe something.
And yeah, if you want to hover your mouse to the left corner of your screen, there should be a button that says mute or unmute.
We still can't hear you. There you go. Oop. I think maybe something wrong with your audio. You could always write your response in the chat box.
Young can also send me a private message if it comes up and I can answer it during the panel. There's a drop down arrow, Young, in the chat box, and I'd be happy to, or in the general chat, and I can always answer in there if we want to keep this moving.
Yeah. So Linda, should we give another
5 minutes?
5 minutes and then we'll
Sure.
take a break because we're still waiting for Umpqua Bank and small business owner Catherine Ras to join us. I think Roland Chaiton is here. Let me see.
Yeah, you know what? Some people may want to grab a little sandwich or something. So shall we just say, give a 10-minute break then? Is that good enough for everybody?
Yeah, yeah.
Okay, wonderful.
In the meantime, if you want to talk to us in the chat box, feel free to talk to us in the chat box. We'll answer your questions.
There was something I wanted to add. I know we're on break, but I forget the gentleman's name who owns the detailing business, but he mentioned that he was in Lakewood and that the city of Lakewood is not offering a lot of programs. I just want to encourage folks who may be in those smaller cities or towns or in unincorporated areas to make sure that you're keeping current on what the county is offering that you're in, because Pierce County had a lot of programs out that were able to help those businesses in those areas that are not as large, whose cities aren't providing as, they just don't have as many resources. And they did have, they're now closed, I believe, but they did have some grants and some loans out there. So I'm not sure if you are aware of those or applied for any of those, but I would definitely encourage folks to definitely look into their county for resources as well.
Deirdre, do you have any contact people from the county that we could post on the chat box?
Yeah, I do. Let me go dig through my there's email and see who those folks were, and I will put it in the chat.
Thank you. So now it's 11:48. Yeah, so we have a 10 minutes break. Okay.
Deidre, can you also put the Pierce County website on there? That they also have a lot information about the different loan programs.
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
Young, don't forget to type your email so I could set up a meeting, for you and Graham, so you could talk with Graham directly and he could help you out with the PPP problem that you have. So we're taking a break for 10 minutes. So yeah, we'll be back in 11:57. Perfect. Thank you.
our situation. So let's talk windows. Our vibration window material is like the gold standard in the industry. It's a composite material that lasts longer than 2 times stronger than vinyl. Sales pitch. We'll visit your home, see exactly what you have, and then give you an exact price for it. And we'll give you a price on the windows and doors that you will love. Only ortho.com.
Guidance for schools during the pandemic. The governor's office has not said specific.
Can you please unmute because you know the noise. We just want to make sure we don't have a noise background. Thank you. Let's just wait 1 to 2 minutes because we're want to make sure that our panelists are here. And Jessica, is it possible for us to do a quick poll? Just wanting to know how many business are a startup and how many are been in the business more than 2 years, like or existing or startup poll?
The poll has to be created in advance.
Oh yeah, so maybe we could just ask during the panel session. Now it's 11:58. Thank you. Welcome back. So we're gonna start our last session, which is the panel discussion. And I think Roland Chayden asked, so Roland, we don't have the poll, so how do you want us to ask the people? You just
ask
probably-
them to write in the chat just one word, either existing or startup.
Yes, please write if you are an existing business on the chat box or you are a startup. So it's going to help the panelists to, you know, talk about the material for our panel discussion. Thank you. So let's start our panel discussion. I know Graham is not back yet, so just wait for Graham. But we probably need to.
I'm here.
Okay, cool, great. So thank you for still sticking with us now. So we're gonna have our second session, our panel discussion. In this panel discussion, we're going to discuss about, funds available, PPP, in the COVID situation, and feel free to write your questions during the discussion so we could answer your questions during the panel discussion. Without further ado, our first panel discussion is Catherine Ras. So isn't that amazing that we have a small business owner gonna provide us with a testimonial? Catherine has been working with City of Tacoma. She obtained a loan. Catherine will talk about what she's been through with the loan process with the City of Tacoma. So Catherine, without further ado, talk about yourself and your company in 5 minutes. And before that, Jessica, can you please pull Catherine website so people could learn about Catherine's business and what she does? Thank you, Catherine.
Thanks, Lily, and thanks for having me, you guys. So I guess I'm a startup business. We've only been in business we haven't even been in business for 2 years. The name of my business is The Fern Seed. We're a plant shop. We sell house plants and pots. We have a small storefront that I opened in April of 2019 in the Proctor district in Tacoma. And then just before COVID really came stateside, I was looking to expand into floral and not just houseplants. So we wanted to do flowers that are locally sourced, that come from Washington growers, Oregon growers, California growers, versus flown in from places like Ecuador or from Europe, Australia, which is where a lot of our greens come from, a lot of our flowers, just because we wanted to do something more local and sustainable. And so I was looking for options in how to expand the business, because we needed actually more square footage to be able to do that. We have a 750 square foot space in Proctor. And so we could not possibly prep, like floral design is messy and it takes a lot of space. And so we couldn't possibly do that in the space that we had. So I had connected with Deirdre about what our loan options were through City of Tacoma. And I'd also gone to the place where we bank in Umpqua, and asked about a line of credit, because I had some savings that I had stocked away from starting the business, but not very much. And I knew I wanted a cash buffer, because I didn't want to have to put money into expanding into a second space and buying the equipment and all the stuff that we needed, without having the safety and knowledge that we could continue to pay our staff, always make payroll, have that money in the bank. So I just wanted a line of credit or some way to finance that. And Umpqua's response was, there's no access to a line of credit unless you've been in business for 3 years, which surprised me, just because we had decent cash flow. We were making good money. And so I looked into getting a credit card through Umpqua, which had like decent terms, just in terms of, no payments for 18 months and 0 interest. But I was also just looking for a loan that had better terms, and where we could just sort of have access to that money to spend on whatever, not just things that we could put on a card or finance through a card, where the interest rate would just be a little lower. And so I had connected with Deirdre about City of Tacoma loans, was in the process of applying for those, and then COVID happened. So we actually ended up applying for and getting the EIDL, the disaster loan, through the SBA. And then we also received the City of Tacoma loan, and the COVID loan through City of Tacoma. And then we recently just applied for the Washington Works grant, which was an interesting application process, because we are comparing our numbers this year to our first year in business. And what the application process wants to see is a 25% drop in revenue from 2019 to 2020. Well, we don't have that, because I really scrambled to build a new website to expand into another vertical that makes us a little bit more pandemic proof. That's something that people can shop for from home. We really expanded our e-commerce. We moved into a new space, so we have greater capacity to serve even like a different community here in Tacoma and just more foot traffic. So we have a 3% drop from Q2 2019 to Q2 2020. And then we have an increase for Q3. So I just heard back that like we may not be eligible for that grant, which is kind of a bummer. But it's been a really good process to kind of have the EIDL loan there and the City of Tacoma loan just to create this buffer so that we could expand without, I mean, I do not know where I would be if we did not have that buffer. I wouldn't have been able to take the brave decision to expand in a pandemic, even though it's what's actually now helping us to move forward and make more money. I would have just been losing sleep over worrying about that bank account hitting, $90 every other week as we try to make payroll and pay all our expenses. So that's been my experience.
I found it's very interesting because I talked with Catherine before. Maybe during our panel discussion, we'll talk about how she pivots a little bit during the pandemic with her business. It's really great, testimonial. So we want to learn from her. So our second panelist is Billy Huntley with Umpqua. Billy, please introduce yourself. Tell us what you do with small business and your role, and what does Umpqua have for us?
Thanks, Lily. I appreciate it. So I work with Umpqua Bank. I'm a senior business banker with the bank. So what that means is I work with companies that are up to, typically the niche size for me is up to $15 million in gross revenue.
Not a toy.
Nothing's too small, but I do typically like to cap myself at 15 million, just because of the complexities that involved with clients that go over $15 million. But anyway, what I do is I'm a resource in two ways. So I help people with their day-to-day banking, ultimately just having an advocate by your side, somebody that can get stuff done, and having a single point of contact, instead of going through, a retail banking branch or a 1-800 number to get stuff done. And the other piece is I partner with business owners on helping with access to capital and, having opportunities to set up lines of credit, term loans, real estate loans, whatever the need is for the client. And when I work with a client, my goal is to, take a look at where we are now and what the goal is for the client long-term, and how do we get you from point A to point B. Not always going to be immediately. Hopefully, a lot of the times it will, but sometimes we'll have to create a roadmap and hit some goals along the way in order to get some traditional bank financing. And, if a client's not eligible for bank financing immediately, we partner with folks like Roland to ensure that you have the access to the capital you need. And then, hopefully we can get you set up with, the best rates and terms possible on bank financing, later on down the road. So, I'm a resource to business owners, really when it comes to just the day-to-day banking piece, having somebody by your side that'll advocate for you, and then somebody that'll work with you to help you get the capital you need to be successful, grow your business, and achieve your goals.
Thank you, Billy. One thing that I want to share with people before we go on with another panelist, I've been working with Billy, I think it's like a year.
Yeah.
He actually helped two of my clients who are not his clients getting their PPP. It was really a great experience. He worked with my client, pushing them to submit the information, making them, understand, the roadmap on how to apply for the PPP. So I've been really pleasantly surprised working with Umpqua and particularly with Billy, because he actually served everybody. So this is another thing that Graham was talking about, thinking outside the box. You think that you're going to go to bank like Key Bank or Umpqua or Bank of America, and then because you are their clients, you think that, oh yeah, they're going to help me. But Billy with Umpqua Bank worked with my clients who are not their clients. So think outside the box. Maybe you meet with people, bankers like Billy in this kind of event. You get connected. Relationship, it helps. So Our third panelist is Roland Chaiton with Business Impact. Roland, tell us about what you do and how you help small businesses like us.
Sure. Hello, everyone. I'm Roland Chaiton with Business Impact Northwest. We've been around since 1997 or so. The organization, the parent corporation is Seattle Economic Development Fund. It used to be known as Community Capital Development. The name changed around 2016, I'm sorry, when we had a small merger happen with a small nonprofit that came out of Oregon with the name Business Impact Northwest, and everybody liked that name better. So we changed the name, but it's the same organization. So we are a CDFI. It's another category of lender. It stands for Community Development Financial Institution. It's not a bank and it's not a credit union. There are some credit unions that are also members of the CDFI community. What sets the CDFI community apart is that they're mostly nonprofit organizations, and most of them are working with underserved populations who need both technical assistance and access to capital. And in the beginning, back in the mid-90s, when all of this came about, there were about 80 CDFIs around. And then through some legislation, the Community Development Financial Institutions Agency was developed as part of the federal government. And it's within the Treasury Department. And that became a conduit for some additional capital to flow from the federal government to some of these CDFIs who had to go through a certification process proving who they were working with and how they were helping. And then they were able to obtain some additional capital. Why is that important? Because capital sources are different. The banks get capital sources from depositors. So all of you who have bank accounts, you become the capital sources for those banks. And then they're actually able to do what they call fractional reserve banking. So like for every dollar that might be deposited, they might be able to create between $8 and $10 worth of loans. In our world, we don't have deposits, so we have to raise capital from foundations, from government sources, from private parties, outside investors, and through our own interest earnings. Our costs of capital tend to be a couple points higher than what the banks are, and you know what the bank's cost of capital is because it's the amount they're paying depositors in interest. So because our sources are different, our costs are a little bit different, meaning our loan costs will be a little bit different, a couple points higher in just on average. So if a bank is charging 7 or 7.5%, we may be at 9 or 9.5%. We're not at 16 or 27 or the things you see online. However, we are a little bit higher in general than most of the banks. That's one of the reasons why we work with clients who can't get regular commercial bank financing right now for some particular reason. And then once we get them bankable, they oftentimes will go back to the bank because they can actually get a little bit better interest rates sometimes. But there's other trade-offs there too, because they may not get all the technical assistance that we're providing and other help. So in the technical assistance area, we house the Women's Business Center of SBA, which is one of 3 in Washington State, and it provides technical assistance to all manner of borrowers. It doesn't matter whether you're a woman or a man. We have various counselors, and you can go on our website, www.businessimpactnw.org, and we'll put that in the chat. And you can sign up for counseling. We also have special counseling for veterans as part of the Veterans Business Outreach Center, which covers a 4-state area: Washington, Oregon, Idaho, and Alaska. And that represents SBA Region 10. Folks who have been in the military service and now separated or will be separating in the near future, they can go on and get assistance as well. um, particularly technical assistance for business planning and startups and the like. We also have connections to SBA and the SBA supported programs of SBDC, Small Business Development Centers, and SCORE, which is a volunteer organization which does very robust training and help. And then we work closely with MBDA, Minority Business Development Association, and with Lily and the U.S. Small Business Transportation Resource Center. And so we're connected to a lot of different places. So if we can't help you, we will find you help if you need help. That is a given. We also partner with banks. So a lot of banks will refer business to us, and in particular when they can't get something done. So probably over half of our referrals come from the banking community or the credit union community because they can't get something done. They don't want to lose the client. We want to get the client help. They want to get everybody help. So they'll call us and let us know they might have something to refer over. We will work with the client, see if we can get them bankable, get access to capital in place, and then we'll go down the road as long as we need to before the business goes back to the bank that they started with generally. I'll leave it there for right now, but there's more to say.
Thank you so much, Roland. Like Billy, Roland is one of the biggest small business supporter. We have a great support here today. So take advantage, get connected. Roland actually helped another client too with the PPP. I think that was like what, the last day of PPP? We're trying to wrap up the application, Roland.
Yeah, one of the
And
very
then
last
she got
ones.
it. She got it. Roland texted me in the middle of the night, midnight, like, Lily, make sure she had everything. Tomorrow is the last day. So you know that all these people are here to help you. Please get connected, talk to us, talk to Linda group. We will make it happen. So our third panelist, I know, Graham, that you already introduced yourself, but I think some of the businesses, they joined kind of late. Graham, why don't you just talk to us about what you do?
Thanks again, Lily. Happy to talk with everyone again. I went to University of Washington, Seattle U for law school. I spent 8 years in Washington, D.C., working for the Office of Small and Disadvantaged Business Utilization, including as the acting director. And I've always had a passion for small business owners. And in my private practice now with Ralston Law, which I practice from the peninsula, my hometown, Port Angeles, through Seattle, I focus on business, tax. I'm an attorney and a CPA, and estate planning is my primary focuses.
And with Graham will have like an assistance for you guys. If you have any questions about EIDL or PPP, you want to talk to him, and you're not sure what you're doing with your application. You probably don't know what a PPP is, what is EIDL, what is the grant, what is the difference. Everything, all the information is like overloading with small business owner. Like they're like, oh my God, what is this? So feel free to email us so I could set up a meeting between you and Graham, just kind of like get some advice on how you proceed with the application for the PPP forgiveness or for the EIDL or even with the grant. And then our last, not least panelist, your Deirdre with City of Tacoma.
Hi, so for you guys who have joined a little late and didn't see my presentation at the beginning of the webinar, I work for the City of Tacoma and our Community and Economic Development Department. Like Catherine mentioned, I do work a lot with small businesses to help connect them to resources. I also work on our financing portfolio, and so I am directly working on all of our COVID relief. And in my presentation, I touched on a program that we will have coming out in January that is similar to the previous loan that Catherine received for her business that she got through us. And so I can answer any questions about what financing programs and things like that that we have at the city. And just to kind of build off of what Catherine was talking about and highlight some of the things that I was talking about in my presentation. When Catherine mentioned, you know, the pandemic kind of forced her hand to have to make her business pandemic proof by, you know, making sure that they got online, making sure that they were able to do online orders, whether that was pickup or delivery, and making that pivot. Our loan that's going to be rolling out in January is something that you can use those funds to do those kinds of activities, which a lot of the other products that have been out do not allow you to do. And so I just kind of really want to drive home that flexibility that I talked about in our funding programs that's not available in some of the other ones. And I would really encourage you guys to kind of look to Catherine and her experience and what she's been able to do as a result of the pandemic, and how she's used those funds to kind of spring into action. And when you're thinking about what you're going to apply for and considering the City of Tacoma's resurgence loan in January.
Thank you, Deirdre. So now let's go and ask some questions to the panelists. So I'm going to start with my questions first, just to stimulate the discussion. So I'm going to ask probably Billy first. What is the importance developing banking relationship?
Thanks, Lily. It's huge. I mean, ultimately, you know, it's really hard to go to a bank that you don't have a relationship with and ask them for a loan. With that being said, that's why it's so important to choose and kind of interview your banks ahead of time. And if you are having an issue right now with your bank, whether that issue, you know, in this year it could be a number of things, right? Whether it was an unfriendly PPP process, whether there's just, you know, not a lot of, you know, your banker's not willing to work with you as far as creating a map to how to get to where you want to go. Your banker's not, maybe they're just not even responsive to you, right? That's a big piece of your day-to-day, right? You should have someone by your side that, number one, makes banking easy, is responsible, you can contact them. And then number two, they understand your business, the ins and outs of it, the challenges, and they work with you on how to overcome those challenges. You know, and, you know, I would say review those financials with your banker quarterly. You know, and if your banker is only responsive in times of emergency, as opposed to proactively reaching out and trying to find ways to help, then, you know, it may be time to at least consider looking at other options. You know, there's a lot of banks, a lot of bankers out there, and everyone needs a good banker by their side that they can count on, not only when they need them, but to help proactively get them where they want to go.
Thank you. I just want to echo a little bit, you know, what is the importance of the relationship. One of my clients actually went to the bank, to the branch, asking for a line of credit, and they said, oh, you're not eligible for that. Then the client met the banker, the same bank that they're banking with, and then they have the relationship after that meeting, you know, after the branch meeting, and then he actually get $25,000 line of credit with that banker. Isn't that weird? Like the same company, the branch said, no, you're not eligible. And then the banker from the corporate said, yeah, you're eligible for $25,000. Always remember, in life, even in life, you know, relationship is the key. So Catherine, maybe you want to share with us, you know, some of your experience since you're a small business owner. Do you think relationship with the banker is really important?
Yeah, I mean, so we bank with Umpqua, and I've always, we started banking with, I think it was Sound Credit Union, but I just needed a bank that was honestly closer to our physical location so that I could bring our cash deposits over. And so I have never, you know, in my business, I had a business previous to this, and I just banked with Chase. And it's just completely like branch, you're anonymous. We didn't have like a small business relationship with Chase at all in my previous business. And in this business, like going to Umpqua was like, I've never really had that experience before where the bank branch cared about your business and how you were doing. And so I feel like what's been really great about that relationship, whether we got the line of credit or not, my experience going into the bank branch and just talking with the team there was, hey, I have this thing I want to do. I think I need around $25,000 to be able to do it comfortably. What do I need to have? Like, where should I be what are you going to look at in order to tell me that we're ready to do this? And it reminded me of the experience of like going and getting pre-approved for a mortgage. Just like you could be looking on Redfin, like, oh, I'm going to buy a house. And it's all just a fantasy until somebody pre-approves you or tells you like, this is what you need to have in line in order to get these things. And I feel like being able to go to my bank branch and just sort of ask those questions and be taken seriously. And then understand what the different financing options were for me at that time was just super helpful. I didn't feel like I was just calling an 800 number or speaking to a bank teller who didn't have information or access to the products that the bank is actually able to offer. And they treat our business like we're an important client of theirs. So that's all just been really good. It's just a great resource to have.
Thank you. So I think we have a question from the chat. It says, what are the top 5 questions to ask a banker when interviewing a banker? Maybe Roland, you could help us to answer this. And then Graham maybe chime in after that. Ron, you're muted. Yeah. Okay.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Yeah. I was trying to answer one of the questions in the chat. Somebody asked if we offer lines of credit, and something has malfunctioned with the computer and I can't get it to type into the chat. So I will answer live that yes, we do offer small lines of credit, and they can progressively increase with performance, but we do have that capacity. They usually start somewhere between $10,000 to $15,000, maybe up to 25, but they can go higher depending on the business, its performance, and how we get to know the business. So another thing too there about businesses is do realize, everybody, that even though we may be a nonprofit, this is a business, and a business has to have clients. And so we're going to help everybody in hopes that some of these clients, some of you, will actually become borrowers, because if we can't have borrowers, then one of our big sources of income, which is interest income, which is a huge source of income for the banks, would go away. So while we have technical assistance services and different funding that supports all that, the lending operation is a big part of what we do, and it's there to help the borrowers. Not everybody asks, and we don't have to finance everybody, but we do want to finance everybody that needs it and can qualify. So back to the questions about what to ask your banker. The first thing is to find out if they do business with your company, like as a startup or an existing business. By looking at the chat, I saw that predominantly there's existing businesses on this call, which is interesting. But always sort of start with that, because if you're going in and looking for a loan and you find out that the bank will only do loans once you've been in business for a year or 2 years or 3 years, you can still have a conversation, but you know that ultimately that's not where you're going to get your initial financing if you're a startup. So you want to get that question out of the way. Another question might be if they work with your type of business. You might be in a specific industry. Maybe you're in a restaurant business. Some banks don't want to work with restaurants, particularly during the COVID situation. This came up yesterday. One client was telling me that they can't get any bank to help them with their business right now because it's directly related with the service that they provide to restaurants. And they've talked to like a dozen banks and nobody's even interested, which I found very difficult. But anyway, we're trying to help them. Will the bank work with your industry? There's some banks just won't work with your industry at all. Another question you might want to ask is, do you credit score loans for your loan decisions? How does credit scoring or credit reports work for your bank? Some lenders, that's all they use. And then other lenders will look at a bigger picture of what's going on with your business and you personally. Yes, your credit score may be important because it reflects your prior payment record for different debts that you have, but it's not the whole story of what's going on. So, but there are some lenders that's all they want to look at right now, particularly the online lenders. They have a credit scoring model. They can get you an answer like almost instantly, but it's all credit scored. So, or predominantly credit scored. So if that's what you want, and if you can get the right interest rate, I'm not saying don't do that. Some people do that, but most people, particularly startups, that's not where you want to be starting. So you want to understand what they're going to be looking at, and maybe they have a particular credit report that they use. Maybe they use just TransUnion or maybe just Equifax. Some use all three. You might want to know that. You might want to get your credit score ahead of time. And you can ask them if they have a target credit score that they're after for starting loans. Like we have a target credit score, but it's just a target. It's like 675. It's a target. It doesn't mean that we don't do loans if you're under that. We do. There's just other factors that come into play. But people always ask, so we tell them. All the banks have a target. One of the reasons that particular number exists for us is that in statistical research, we found that people that have lower credit scores than that, there's a lot of history that shows difficulty later on in repaying like business debt. So it means maybe a little more extra caution sometimes, but we look at a much bigger picture than just a credit score in deciding on a loan. We'll come back to some of the criteria later, but another question you might ask them is, what if you've had a prior incident like a bankruptcy or something? Will that disqualify you? Some banks will say it has to be 2 years previous to the current time. Some will say 4 years. Some will say, no, we can't do it at all. So you want to get those questions sort of out of the way. And you also want to sort of interview the banker and find out their experience with maybe your industry and small business lending in general, just for a comfort level. Like if you're trying to find an attorney, you want to interview at least 4 or 5 attorneys to see who you're comfortable with. And it's really, really important. Just because one has all types of extra degrees or something, that might not be the person who you feel the most comfortable with. You want someone who's going to advocate for you. Your banker is going to be your advocate to try and get you finance. You got to feel comfortable with them. So that's important. I'll let one of the other panelists add to that as a starting point.
Graham, you want to add, Graham? And Billy, go ahead. Graham, we can't hear you.
What Roland just shared is on point for where my questions were going to start, which is when he talks about thinking of the banker as an advocate. You want to think of them as a team member, right? That this is someone that you might end up working with for the next 30 years. And some of the questions, of course, are going to be focused on qualifying you. You know, are you going to be a good fit as an underwriting loan criteria to work with that bank? And a half-point interest rate from one bank to the next, or even 1%, isn't that big of a deal when you think about the long-term prospect of developing the right relationship with the right lender and the person that you want to work with. Because something else that your banker can bring to you is a question that you can ask is, how would you see us growing together? Don't just ask the bank, how does the bank help you grow? You know, you go back to my presentation, we talk about a community, an ecosystem of us working together. Don't just think about take, it's how do you work with your lender to where you can both help each other? Because that bank probably, and this is the value that you may have, and you brought up, Lily, it's about relationships. Maybe they have customers that would be a good fit for you, right? You're in sales, and all of a sudden that banker, because they provide a loan to you, maybe it's 1% higher, but if they're bringing you $50,000 more in revenue a year because the customers and relationships that they have, isn't that worth more in value? Right? So it's not just the number or the interest rate on the loan. Think about the relationship. Roland also mentioned their experience in the particular field that you're in, right? Because if they've seen success from other customers in that space, think about the value that they're going to bring to you. And if you have the right person that you're working with that, you know, fits your culture and your flow and you feel comfortable, now all of a sudden they're teaching you things that's going to save you years of maybe trial and error. It's going to save you money on your bottom line. Don't just think about the interest rate. Think about that relationship and the additional value. So it's about asking, how are we growing together? How can we best work together? What kinds of relationships are available working at this lender? How can I help you to get the best terms available for me, right? A lot of times the banker that you're working with isn't the actual underwriter. So it's what do I need to give you so that you can help me at the end of the day, and having an open conversation. So that's my main point is, don't just think about the interest, think about the larger picture and the value that a bank, and going back to relationships, can deliver to you and your company.
Yeah, I agree with you guys, because I actually work with a client who's in a construction business, and he went ahead and then applied for a loan with this bank and then spent so much time and he didn't get it. And then we figured it out. The bank is not construction friendly. So do research, work closely with folks like Linda's group. They know. I mean, my group knows. I learned after 13 years working with them. So you don't know right away, just because your uncle said that the ECU or credit union is great, but they're not really great for, I mean, I'm not trying to discredit, credit union, but some of the banks, they're not good fit for you. So I have another questions in the chat box, and I think I'm gonna ask Deirdre to answer the question, and also Billy. So what are the most important documents to take to the banker? I know that Deirdre, you're kind of like part of the underwriting group, so you kind of like understand all the documentation. Can you share with us?
Yeah, so depending on what stage you are at, if you are an existing business, like I'm not a banker, but we do have financing products at the city. But so if you're an existing business and you're coming to us seeking a loan, whether that's for COVID or generally, I don't know if I mentioned it, we do have just a regular small business financing portfolio. And you're seeking some funding, we're gonna want to, the most important thing is that you have your financials in order. So we're gonna want to see that profit and loss statement. We're gonna want to see your balance sheet, and we're gonna want to see your taxes. And what we're looking for in those documents is to see, like, is the business profitable? There's some other things that are probably foreign to folks who are not involved in underwriting, but we're going to want to look at debt to equity ratio, right? So like in terms of how you're operating, how much debt do you carry? We're going to want to look at things like, there's a lot of different metrics, and I don't want to go too far into it because it might go over people's head. But the best thing that I can say for folks to do is make sure that they're keeping their books in order. There are businesses out there who've been in business for 30 plus years, but still don't have like an updated POS system. So they're still operating off of like receipts and paper. And so it's really hard for them sometimes to get mobilized to get those documents together. So if you're able to get QuickBooks or to get some kind of software or something to where you are tracking your books in a way that is more efficient, that's going to be really helpful. I mean, in our first program, we saw, people who were running businesses but didn't really have a ton of knowledge on the documentation and financial side. So we were seeing balance sheets that weren't balanced and, people who had no idea that a balance sheet, should balance and things like that. And so it's definitely going to be really important when you're approaching bankers or, the city like the city of Tacoma and trying to access financing, that you understand what those documents are and that, they're up to par. And, you can try and get a preliminary look by going to some technical assistance providers like Business Impact Northwest or like, SBDC or like SCORE. And so I would definitely recommend that you tap into those resources if you are uncertain.
Billy, you want to add just a little bit, Billy, since you're a banker?
Yeah, I would echo those same documents. So tax returns, historical tax returns, at least 2 years for the business and the owner. Up to date P&L and balance sheet for the current year. And the only other thing that I would add would be probably a personal financial statement that just outlines, what you have in the bank, what real estate do you own, how much equity do you have in it, and what are your liabilities. Because that kind of gives, that would give me enough information to, at least see where the business is today, work with the owner to create a game plan. Hey, are we there right now from what I see? Or, do we need to, create a plan and try to close some gaps and get you to where you want to be?
Okay, thank you. So another
Lily,
question. Oh, sorry.
Lily, could I add just one more thing?
Oh, sure, sure.
Just on top of what Billy was saying. So on your personal financial statement, that's going to have your assets and liabilities, and the liabilities is what you owe people. And what you owe there's going to be a line that's going to ask, like, what's your debt on credit cards and installment loans and things like that. What we're really looking at is for people to have looked at their credit report and know what's on the credit report, so that when they put things on that personal financial statement, it matches pretty closely to that credit report. If the credit report is wrong, they should be able to tell us that. It's real important. And then here's a tip for everyone. So when you look at the credit report, it will say how much money you pay just on average for your installment loans and your revolving loans. So if you're paying out an average, say, of $200 a month in debt, you can take that number and divide it by your income. And that gives you your monthly income. That will give you something called the debt to income ratio. And most of the lenders are looking at that ratio to be like 35% or less. Some banks want it to be 30% or less. For us, the target is 40. We have gone higher, but with certain mitigations. But when we start seeing that debt to income ratio be up there in the like 70%, 75% range, what that's telling us is for every dollar you get in income, 75 cents of that dollar is going to pay existing debt. That's awfully high. So just as a tip, learn that for yourself. Know what your debt to income ratio is, just so you have some idea to compare it to, say, a ballpark figure of what 40% would be. And so if you're not sure, like, you can look at your income and take 40% of your monthly income, and that would be like the maximum target you would want to be paying out in debt. So if you're paying out more than that in debt, just personally know that you'll probably have a conversation about that with your lender. They're going to want to know more of what's going on and why things are so high. And maybe it needs to be restructured somewhat so it's not such a burden on you. But lately we've been seeing people who've been just dramatically affected by COVID, and they've taken lots of small loans on credit cards and other things. So before, maybe they had a 20% debt to income ratio, but now they're up like 60%. So just be aware that this is something you can figure out yourself. You can know your own debt to income ratio just by doing that quick little math piece. And it is something that you can always talk with your banker about. Again, they're not there to chase you away. They're there to help you because you're part of a potential client base for them. They want to help you. So everybody wants you to succeed. We just want to have you in sort of a situation where your success has greater possibilities. One more thing I want to say, again, because of technical issues, I can't respond right into the chat. There was another question about how to access, for veterans, how to access assistance with our Veterans Business Outreach Center. If you go on our website, and I think somebody typed that into the chat, www.businessimpactnw.org, you can find somewhere on our website Veterans Business Outreach Center or counseling, and just sign up for counseling and you can get an appointment. And if you're with the wrong person, as a starting point, ask them, are you one of the counselors for the veterans? And if they say no, they will reassign somebody from the Veterans Business Outreach Center to you. So that's how to do it, through the website.
Okay, thank you. And speaking about COVID, I know that, it's a very hot topic. Can you, let's just start with Graham first. Can you tell us just a little bit? I'm going to go with Graham and then go with Billy and of course, Deirdre. Can you tell us about financing in times of COVID? What should you know? Like some tips or, Graham, I know that you were talking a lot earlier. It's great information, but some people join us after the break. So maybe you want to share, just sum it up what you said earlier.
Yes, that financing in times of COVID, it's resources in time of COVID. Okay, because I want businesses to start with grant opportunities first. I know that this is an access to capital, but grants are better for you as a business owner because many times it means that it does not need to be repaid. So be resourceful first in finding those grant opportunities. Number two, if you are looking at financing, you've got different types of lenders, whether it's Roland at a CDFI, Billy at a private lender like Umpqua, City like Deidre. So you have different options. And what we've been talking about in this panel is you need to also think about relationship, that it's not just the financing or the interest rate, it's about the relationship with the right lender, and not only the institution, but the person at that institution that can add value to your business as a whole, not just the interest rate, and someone that you want to work with. So that even in times of COVID, that should also be a priority for you, that you don't want to be rash in your decision to scramble for financing. And all of a sudden you've locked up all of your collateral with a loan and it's with the wrong relationship. Grants first, financing second. And when you're looking for financing, you're still looking for the right relationship. And just know that you have options: federal, state, city, different types of private lenders and nonprofit institutions.
Thank you. How about Billy? Tell us about, options for COVID.
Yeah. So, I mean, most banks like ours, Umpqua, we're completely open for credit right now. So we're doing all kinds of loans. We're doing lines, term loans, and real estate loans. I think the biggest thing is the bank wants to see that a company's at least treading water through COVID. We're still really underwriting to 2019 tax returns, and then when we take a look at the interim financials, we're looking to see that the business is still operating and it's still at least treading water. we're not necessarily expecting every business to be experiencing, the same year they had in 2019 or to be profitable. But, we want to see, it's close enough where we have confidence that once COVID ends, or once we get back to some sense of normalcy, that the business will return to, normal volume. But so I think and that's where the relationship with your banker really comes in. Having a banker that really understands your business, your trends, your seasonalities, your typical volume, and can dive into what's currently going on and can tell a story to to advocate on your behalf and hopefully get the deal done. But I've been pleasantly surprised with the way our credit's been working here at Umpqua. I haven't had the door shut on any deal the last 4 months. I've been able to get creative on a few and get stuff done that was a little more challenging than others. But yeah, we're fully open as a bank, Umpqua is. And then the other piece is, when you work with me, I'm always going to keep those, stimulus options front and center. And, if there's an opportunity, for additional PPP down the road, or if a client hasn't taken advantage of EIDL, we'll look at those options too, and we'll figure out, hey, what's the best structure and what's the best package, to meet your financing needs.
Okay, thank you. I know that I've been asking all this financial institution, but I want to put Catherine in a hot spot here. So Catherine, I want to ask you, how is your company pivoting during this tough time? Share with us. You mentioned earlier COVID-free service. Share with us just a little bit.
Sure. So we, I first opened in April of 2019, and it's my first retail business. So I have a pretty small storefront. I just didn't want to take on a ton of risk having a bunch of space and expensive rent if it wasn't going to work out. But the crazy thing is, like, we need more space. We were more successful than I thought we would be. And so even before COVID, I was looking at how do we make sure that we're meeting the needs of our customer base in the space that we have, or how could we expand it in a way that we are maybe expanding even a little bit beyond just Tacoma? How do we make our business relevant online, and how do we make our business, not only, the other thing is we sell houseplants. We sell houseplants and pots. The houseplants are having a moment right now. But I worry in a way that that's not going to be a sustainable business for the next 15 years. Maybe it will be, who knows? So how do we make sure that we're more than just that? People think of us in a way that's, what is the essence of our business? And then how do we make sure that we can extract that into something bigger that will stay relevant for a while? So what we did, and what we were planning on even before COVID, but we went really, really fast into launching these things without any preparation when COVID happened, because we were completely closed. We wanted to be able to ship potted plants. So just smaller potted plants as gifts. So if somebody who's having a birthday, or, if somebody who's graduating or having a moment, you can send that instead of sending flowers. And it's something cute, and it's coming from a small business, and we write a note and it comes packaged in an adorable box. So that was one thing that we wanted to start. And then the other thing that we wanted to launch were classes and events, because people had always asked us to do workshops, but in a 750 square foot space, we just couldn't do them at all. We certainly could not do them during the pandemic. So we were looking for space to be able to host people to do things like a wreath building class, terrarium building, floral arranging. And then the final thing that we wanted to do was expand into floral. And I had talked a little bit about that before, but just instead of just doing plants, we want to be an option where people can buy flowers. I didn't see a lot of options here in Tacoma that weren't businesses that had been around for a really long time and weren't trying to make a play for the customer who might be interested in a more sustainable way of purchasing flowers. So not using plastics, not using floral foam, which is harmful to the environment, making sure that our carbon footprint from who we're ordering from is lower. And we're talking about supporting local agriculture and those issues. So, all of those things combined were things that we started to try to do right away. shipping, doing online classes. So we started to do little kits that you could buy online. And then there was a corresponding class that would happen on Instagram, that once you got the kit, we would walk you through how to do the thing that was contained in the kit, like a terrarium build or something like that. And now what we're doing, we've moved into a second storefront space on South Tacoma Way. And we're able to run our full floral business. So we can do floral prep and delivery within 200 miles. We're partnering with a third party. It's almost like an Uber for delivery called Roadie, so that we're able to do like a less than truckload, but it's like a less than carload, like you're just sending stuff. It works really like Uber shared car service. So we're able to like really expand our delivery route without actually having to hire a delivery driver, which is great. So that we're serving the entire region and not just the people that could come and physically shop in our store. And then we ship the little plants nationwide. So those were all the things that we were kind of working on, but had to do them faster than I think I was even ready for. It's been a year. But I'm really glad that we are doing those things, because now that we're here and we're established in this space, it really has, especially since we just went through the second shutdown with the restrictions on restaurants and 25% capacity at retail. Our online sales and our floral sales are what is now carrying us through the dip in the retail sales that we were seeing. When we first closed, people were still shopping with us online, even though we had a terrible website at that time, because people just wanted to support. They were buying gift cards. There was a real goodwill. That goodwill is done. It is gone. It's still happening a little bit, but like people are fatigued, and they're looking to save money, spend their money elsewhere. They're not just coming to your retail shop to spend money just to help you out. And so I think what we're trying to do is offer something that's still viable, still something that people want, and maybe not something that we provided at first, and just make that more widely and regionally available. So that really has carried us through like the past, month and a half, where we've been impacted by, from the election to the second shutdown.
Thank you so much. I know that we have 4 more minutes, but I want to ask one more question. Number one, does anybody have any questions? Maybe we could just have one last question here from the audience, but I have a list of questions,
I do have a quick question. This is
Okay, go
Hafiz.
Yes.
Catherine, could you, oh yeah, she already did that. Thank you. It's called Rodi. Appreciate that.
And also, Hafiz, I know that Celebrity Access Truck Logistics is here too. This is like a forum, so all small business could help out each other here. So get, the information from Celebrity Access, because they're doing some delivery stuff as well. But I think the last one that I want to ask to Billy and Roland and Graham and Deidre. So how to access capital for small business who have a credit score too low, lack of cash flow, not enough collateral, or lack of equity, not generating enough revenue. Can you share any tips? How about we start with Roland first?
Sure. Those 4 things are key points that sometimes cause a loan to not go through. So one is that, and there's like sometimes a 5th one, which has to do with capacity, the ability of the business owner to actually run the business. I had some former military pilots actually recently wanting to start a business that had to do with restaurants, and there was like, a big question about, well, you guys can fly these sophisticated planes, but have you ever served food before, or something like that? It's not necessarily a carryover. So what we're looking for is not to have weakness in more than 2 of those areas. We prefer everything to be strong, but if there's weaknesses, maybe we can deal with weakness in 1 area, maybe 2, but we have to shore up the other areas. They have to be strong. So if you're credit score is weak, maybe you can offer some additional collateral, or maybe you have additional guarantors, or maybe you're able to do some fundraising or for equity, or get some grants that will put some more equity into the business. I went through this recently with a little startup where they were a startup with no track record at all, and going into something a little bit risky. So they talked to relatives and they got their parents to agree to be guarantors for 50% of the loan, and their best friend to be a guarantor for 10% of the loan. And so we were able to get the loan approved because we mitigated the deficiency there, because it was sort of a startup with no track record in a riskier industry. So wherever it's possible to mitigate a deficiency or something that's just not real strong with something else that's stronger, that's sometimes how we do it. And so we'll look at everything and we try and figure out where do you have the greatest strengths or the greatest possibilities, and let's play on that and build that up and try and mitigate the other areas that may not be quite as strong. Like if you have a low credit score or something, or lack of collateral, sometimes we can mitigate a lack of collateral with a government guarantee, so we can get around that. So we just need to identify what are the weak points and what are the strong points, and then play up the strong ones to be the mitigants for the weaker areas.
Hey, Billy, you want to add just a little bit?
Yeah, I would approach that the exact same way as Roland. You know, and in particular on the credit piece, you know, for us at Umpqua, you know, it's not really a score more per se. We take the score into account, but that's not the end all be all. It's more, you know, when we're looking at credit, what's contained in the report as opposed to the score. I think there's a lot of misnomers out there that, you know, a lot of banks have, you know, minimum FICO criteria, and it's really more so about the attributes within the report than the score. And then, you know, to Roland's point, it's just really about, you know, highlighting the areas of strength and mitigating any potential weakness with those areas of strength. So ultimately, any loan request is probably going to have strength. It's also going to have some challenges with it. So it's really about the banker and the lender trying to ensure that they're mitigating any of those challenges with the strengths, and working with the borrower to make it the strongest package as possible.
Deirdre, you want to add just a little bit?
Yeah, I mean, I would just echo both what Roland and Billy were saying, in that, you know, we look at a combination of factors. So if one part of what you're bringing to the table is weak, we will look at others to see how we can justify it. And at the city, we've created programs specifically to address some of the inequities that we found in lending, like our microloan program, which is anything under $25,000, which carries no requirements on equity or collateral, and that we can be flexible with the credit score. But again, we can't, what we're not interested in is overburdening businesses or people with debts that they cannot afford. And so we want to make sure that we are addressing those inequities, but also making sure that we are lending to folks who we understand need an opportunity that they may not be able to access elsewhere, but still have, like Billy and like Roland were saying, strengths in other categories for us to justify making those decisions to approve people for loans.
Lastly, Graham, please provide us with some inputs.
I think I'm just going to go back to remember grants first. I know you're talking about financing, and I don't have anything to add to what everyone else already brought up, but think grants first. That's free money for you as a small business owner. That should always be your first step. And then everyone already gave great advice on the financing side.
I think 1 o'clock, guys, we made it. 1:03 actually. But before we close, I just want to share with you guys some more information. Please work with all the resources, MBDA, City of Tacoma, even myself with another hat as a small business transportation resource center. We help small business related to transportation agency. We provide support service how to repair your credit. We could pay for consultant to help you to repair the credit, because sometimes, yeah, your credit is like has a lot of blemishes. Maybe if you work with an expert and then start working on your credit, a lot of people think that, oh, it's over. I have a 400 whatever credit. I worked with a company 2 years ago, and she had a 400 level credit score. Now she's like 800. And like, you just need to follow the guide from us. Work with us. It's not going to be easy, guys. But Linda's group, I mean, especially City of Tacoma, I'm jealous. I wish I live in City of Tacoma. I live in Renton. I don't think they have that kind of support, Linda. But I give kudos to them. We are here because of them. So work with them. I put my information on the chat. And if you need to talk to Graham about PPP, EIDL, we're here to help. Like I said, it's free, and we're here to help. I mean, isn't that amazing that, we have all the resources? All we need is your time. And Linda, you want to say something before we close
Sure.
up?
In closing, thank you so much for everyone for attending. And I just want you all to know this is a great time to be shameless and just say, look, I need help. Because a lot of times I find that, small businesses, minority businesses, particularly, there is no shame to this game, meaning there's a lot of resource, there's a lot of opportunities to learn and how to move those financials around so that it's beneficial to you. So if you've been kind of feeling dejected or frustrated in the past, you know what, it's time to get resilient, because that's what we do, right? And reach out and say, look, I need help. And we're here to help you with that. So with that, one last thing. I'd like to thank all the panelists and also the Business Impact Northwest and Umpqua. But another resource I want you guys to know is to start building relationships with your local credit unions and community banks, okay? So with that, I think we're done.
Yeah, we're done. Thank you, guys. Thank you, thank you. Have a wonderful day. Have a safe holiday. Take care.